We have never had a thorough engagement process set up with the government to consent to these kind of industries.
Tonight, new deal or no deal. A First Nation in BC wants more of a say and more of a share of mining revenues in their territory.
One of the basic greetings that we use here in Ho'okame'enim is asking, how are you? E-H-U-I-O. E-H-U-I-O.
And high-tech tongues. Google marks World Indigenous Peoples Day with a tool that works in 55 global languages.
Good evening, I'm Rick Harp. Welcome to APTN National News. We lead off tonight in Labrador, where it's been a long week for a group of land protectors. Angry over recent flooding of the reservoir that will feed the Muskrat Falls mega project, the group has staged a series of actions of late, from a motorcade, a Last Supper, and now a funeral procession. APTN's Angel Moore is in Happy Valley Goose Bay. She files this report.
The coffin is symbolic of the death of the Grand River. Labrador land protectors say the water is being destroyed by the hydro dam project. They are given an opportunity to speak at the Muskrat Falls public inquiry, where 10 people have 10 minutes. Kirk Lethbridge tried to sum up a lifetime of memories.
And now, I come to your land and I give you 10 minutes. I give you 10 minutes to be able to say how I feel about the land that I love more than my own life.
The provincial inquiry is investigating the project. Nalcor, the provincially owned corporation, has had problems from the beginning. Structural safety, environmental risks, and an $8 billion overcost led to public resistance against the project.
I've been in the jail, in the Newfoundland jail, for protesting against Muskrat Falls. I'd like to see the real criminals go to jail, the ones that destroyed the land.
The protectors say methylmercury will be formed when the reservoir that feeds the dam is flooded. It will poison the water, the food, and eventually people. Another concern is the stability of the dam, that the North Spur will fail and flood the area.
I was also quite taken by the, I'd say, fear, the actual physical and mental fear that people conveyed about the concern that the, something will happen with the North Spur.
Jamie Felsberg hopes concerns are taken seriously.
People aren't in it to stop the project anymore. They just want honesty, and they want to make sure that people are safe. Because all in all, that's really what matters here.
Despite this, Felsberg believes the inquiry was listening.
There were a lot of emotions flowing and a lot of knowledge, traditional knowledge, which is extremely valuable, that was shown this evening. And all in all, hopefully, I think there's going to be a good outcome.
People have been against the controversial hydroelectric project for years, but flooding of the reservoir has already begun. The inquiry may be too little, too late.
If we'd have been consulted at this level early on, that would have been more fair, but we weren't. Traditional knowledge was blown away. It was not even a word.
The future generation that's coming up won't be able to do things, and they've been ripped from that benefit or right. And nothing's going to happen because of that. That's the thing that really tugs at my heartstrings.
The inquiry's final report is due at the end of December. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.
To the other part of the country now, northern BC specifically, the Tahltan Nation has been busy handing out eviction notices. The target, a mine that has operated in their traditional territory for decades. But as APTN's Laurie Hamlin explains, the Tahltan aren't necessarily against mining as such. They just want a better deal.
Chad Norman Day, president of the Tahltan central government, was in Vancouver discussing his nation's new investments. But that's not all he had to talk about. The Tahltan want Jade and Placer mines operating in their territory suspended. They've been there for over 30 years without consent.
We have never had a thorough engagement process set up with the government to consent to these kind of industries. British Columbia seems to think that they are low impact industries, but when you look at the impact collectively and when you look at the lack of regulations, you quickly realize that cumulatively they have a very negative impact on the land base. There's just a lot of problems right now. So we don't consent to them, and we'll never consent to them until there's some serious changes.
Day says there are at least 25 companies in Tahltan Nation exploring for or extracting jade. It's an important rare resource, with 3/4 of the world's market coming from BC. Last month, Day flew out to different sites and handed out eviction notices.
As president of the Tahltan Central Government, I'm here to formally inform you that your company's operations within our territory do not have the consent of our people.
We understand that they have tenures that were legally given to them and that some of these operators are not breaking any provincial laws. And regardless of whether they're breaking provincial laws or not, these are industries that are fundamentally unconstitutional because they have taken place without properly engaging with the Tahltan people, and there's been no benefits back to the people in terms of employment, contracts, revenue sharing, ensuring that we are heavily involved in the environmental work.
The Tahltan have been in contact with the BC government, and Day says he expects a positive outcome and a deal that's good for all parties.
They are very live to the concerns that we brought up, and I'm very confident that steps are going to be taken in the next year to make sure that a lot of our concerns are addressed. Otherwise, the conflicts are going to continue to increase in intensity, and Tahltan don't want that, the province doesn't want that, the operators don't want that.
We ask in the letter for them to peacefully shut down.
Lori Hamlin, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Still in BC, the fate of millions of salmon is at stake tonight, and the clock is ticking. That's according to the BC Assembly of First Nations, which is calling for a moratorium on all fishing on the Fraser River. Already 90,000 Chinook are waiting downstream, and almost 2 million sockeye will be arriving within weeks. As noted, the BC AFN wants the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to immediately close all commercial and recreational salmon fishing until the rock slide can be cleared. Meanwhile, the Chilcotin Nation have declared a state of local emergency in response to the crisis. Chief Joe Alphonse says his nation's traditional food supply needs to be a top priority.
We believe there's a huge crisis at hand, and I think people are and government officials are not taking this serious enough. Virtually puts us in a situation where there'll be no fisheries for us. If we're only going to get 10% going past that slide area, for example, and then we need all the fish to actually make a run at it to increase those numbers as much as we can. You have recreational fisheries and all of that stuff. They have to pay a price too.
To northern Alberta now, where a project destined to be Canada's largest off-grid solar farm has just received a surge in support from Ottawa. Late this week, the federal government announced it will add $4.5 million to the $3.3 million already committed by the province. The joint investment boosts the efforts of Three Nations Energy, a partnership of the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation, Mikisew Cree First Nation, and the Fort Chipewyan Métis Local 125. Aimed at the energy needs of the off-grid community of Fort Chipewyan, the installation of some 7,500 solar panels will significantly reduce their dependence on diesel for heat and power. With a projected completion date of fall 2020, it is estimated the panels will replace about 800,000 liters of diesel, or roughly 25% of Fort Chip's annual energy use.
It's good news, it's continued to work in regards to promoting green energy, and we're going to promote oil and gas. Well, we might as well try to compromise and level the playing field. Plus, it brings down the volume of how much diesel we're going to use when we burn it off on the plant. So it does a lot of good for the community.
Some sad news to report out of Grassy Narrows from earlier this week. Former Chief Simon Fobister passed away this Monday in Thunder Bay at the age of 64. For decades, Fobister was outspoken about the effects of mercury poisoning on his community, mercury that had been dumped into the river system by nearby industry. And it was during Fobuser's time as chief that the province of Ontario finally agreed to begin a cleanup. Fobuser also fought for the Mercury Home and Treatment Centre, a centre Grassy Narrows is still working to get built with the federal government. Memorial services will be held tomorrow in Grassy Narrows. Time for a break on the newscast. When we come back, we'll hear about a new initiative from Google to mark Indigenous Peoples Day. Stay tuned. Looking ahead to weather for Saturday, St. John's 0, Charlottetown 24 and cloudy, Nain 10 and rain, La Grande River 13 and rain, Quebec City rainy 19, Montreal 22 and rain, Sarnia mostly sunny 27, Windsor mostly sunny 28, Sioux Lookout a rainy 26, Wawa partly cloudy 23, Thompson a rainy 19, The Pas mostly sunny and 20, Brandon rainy 25, much the same in Barons River but 26, Saskatoon mostly cloudy 20, Swift Current a rainy 18. Welcome back to APTN National News. Today is World Indigenous Peoples Day, and to help mark the occasion, Google has just unveiled Voyager, a tool that, through its Google Earth app, allows its users to engage with one of 55 Indigenous languages. Here with more, APTN's Todd Lamoran.
So clicking it immediately takes you to Google Earth. The globe has 55 pins to represent 55 Indigenous languages. You can hear how Cherokee sounds. Or what about an Amazonian language? In Canada, there are 7 pins for plains, woodland, and swampy Cree, Inuktitut, and Mohawk. But let's zoom into British Columbia and the southeastern part of Vancouver Island, where we can hear Maddie Jones greet people in the Coast Salish language of Hulkaminum.
One of the basic greetings that we use here in Hulkaminum is asking, how are you?
Jones teaches at the secondary school in Ladysmith. Yesterday, she told an elder in her community about the project.
He was so excited about Hulkaminum being opened and ready, and for people to see and hear, to see me and hear me, and I was so excited to tell my elder about what was happening in my life today.
Google Earth picked this language because it worked previously with a University of Victoria anthropologist, Brian Tom, on a different project.
And asked if I would be able to help bring the Hulkaminum language to the story that Google was telling in the Voyager project.
Jones was immediately Tom's first choice.
She's a very wonderful teacher of Hulkaminum. I thought she'd be a beautiful person to share her insights and wisdom and just the beautiful way she expresses the language.
But Jones herself had to learn the language as an adult.
I never spoke as a young child because of residential schools. My mother went to residential school and didn't want us to speak at home.
Both of them hope the Google Earth project ignites everyone, and especially the youth, to learn about language and culture.
The land and language and culture are all intertwined. And so here when we're flying around Google Earth and we're seeing the territory, we're seeing people's communities, we're seeing the land from which these languages come originally.
It's going to spark a lot of interest, a lot of questions for our students that want to learn more about our language of the First Nation people in this territory.
Jones gets emotional when asked about what it means for her to be the international voice of Hulkaminum.
Hulkaminum is a very important part of my life. I've worked hard at it. I've heard it all my life through my parents, my grandmother.
about 40% of some 7,000 Indigenous languages are in danger of dying off. But it's not known yet if Google Earth will be expanding the project. Ta Lamran, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Miwasin. Indigenous youth from Canada and Sweden have just returned from an expedition across Arctic waters. An initiative of the Ottawa-based European Union delegation, the trip was meant to give youth a way to compare changing northern climates in another part of the world. Martina Fjellberg and Niels Anda Beyer were among those participants. Hailing from Sápmi territory in Sweden, they joined us earlier from our Ottawa studio. Martina and Niels, I understand you've visited several Inuit communities as part of your journey, a chance for you to compare experiences as Indigenous peoples. What stood out most for you in that regard? We'll start with Martina.
I think that the similarities was so present, and I also think that we share so much culture and we share so much history. Like, for example, the residential schools, we have the similar thing that happened to us in Sweden, and the high suicide rates in the Inuit communities, it's the same in Sweden. And there was so many, you felt connected to the people even though we're from different parts of the Arctic, and that was really precious.
Niels, anything to add to that?
It's mostly the same. Like, it was frightening similar to home, and yeah, just as Martina said.
So
that's about it.
Niels, I'll start with you. And for the second question, you both come from families who live off the land as reindeer herders. How is climate change affecting life in the Sami homeland in that regard?
Well, it's mostly the snow and the ice right now. Like under winter, the winters are shorter, so it's more difficult to like move around the areas, especially when we're moving with the herd to another place. The ices are weaker. There's risk for like reindeers going through the ice, and then we have like just in general like the summers are warmer or they're more unstable, so we can't tell how the summer is gonna be, and like the autumns. It's the weathers. It's difficult to tell what is coming next. Like beforehand, like back in the day, we could tell through the weather we're going to get this, so we can prepare for that. We can't do that anymore, unfortunately.
And how about the numbers of the animals? Has that been affected?
Yes and no. I really can't tell, but maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay. Still, I guess, a big question mark that everyone's trying to figure out. And so, Martina, I understand that part of your mission here in Canada is to see how other parts of the Arctic approach adaptation to climate change. What have you seen so far of that nature that you'll take back with you to Sweden?
I think the biggest thing I will take back is the Talirupi manga that happened when we were out in the expedition. And when we were so privileged to be a part of that announcement in Arctic Bay with the Prime Minister. And I think that the thing that Canada did here with the Talirupi manga is the thing that all other countries who have Indigenous people need to adapt, because that's one of the things I think will help us most with battling climate change. And the thing is using the Indigenous people, their knowledge, using their way of living and the land and their knowledge to help battle this, because we are the people who have been living with the land for centuries, not of it. So we are the people who knows the land the most and will be the ones who's going to be there standing in the front lines fighting it.
All right. Well, Martina and Niels, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you.
Time for a break. When we return, a memorable outdoor performance by Maori women opens the 29th annual Montreal First Peoples Festival. Please stay with us. Let's take a look at your weather for the rest of the country. High level, mostly sunny, 19. Same for Grand Prairie, but 18. Calgary, a rainy 15. Edmonton, a mostly cloudy 18. Campbell River, a rainy 20, a cloudy Bella Coola, and 24. Dease Lake, rainy and 21. Fort Nelson, mostly sunny and 20. Rock River, a wet 8 degrees. Old Crow, 11 and rain. Norman Wells, rainy 17, just like Wati. Inuvik 10 and rain, Sax Harbor cloudy and 4. Repulse Bay 11 and rain, Cambridge Bay cloudy and 10. And thanks for staying with us here on APTN National News. In Maori culture, women teach women. And at the official kickoff to the 29th annual Montreal First Peoples Festival, hundreds braved the element to attend an outdoor workshop led by Maori women, a tribute to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Lindsay Richardson was there. She brings us some of the sights and sounds.
My name is Mihirangi. That is my full name. So the haka has always been used as a form of challenge, whether it's a personal challenge or a challenge for others or a challenge of the issues. It's an opportunity for people to come together as a one unit with one voice, expressing themselves in a really passionate way. It wasn't actually a decision to teach the workshops. A long time ago, some friends of mine actually asked them if I would share the haka workshop with them. And it kind of, what I really noticed is it really was a way of them being empowered. The women are very protective and territorial when it comes to their social groups, their friends, their ways of being. We travel as a group of women. We normally have 3 of us, and one of the big rules is you don't go putting any of the other women down. Globally, we're going through a big crisis, and women must stand up. The Women's Haka is an opportunity for women to embody the virtue, feminine virtues and their own personal power and strength. And I'm really super clear that it's not something that they can take away and go and do at parties, or that they can go and share with other people, or that they can teach other people. It's a very sacred sharing. And as women, we carry babies in our wombs. That's the first environment for humanity. And as that first environment, women and those babies are the first ones affected. The women who attend the workshops are really searching. Some of them are just curious. What is it inside of those women that they can reconnect to? That's probably the most powerful part that I get to have the privilege of witnessing. When the women really start feeling what this means for them, and there's a lot of tears, there's a lot of healing for them going on. Matriarchal societies have always been societies of equality, and so that is what I'm really looking forward into the time that we're coming up to in the future, is that we teach our women and our children and our girls that this equality is something that they can have, and it's available to them now, just they need to remember.
Well, that's it for APTN National News for Friday. Be sure to tune in again all next week for all the latest stories making headlines across Indigenous country. Meanwhile, check us out on the Twitter, the Instagram, and the Facebook for the latest breaking, developing news. I'm Rick Harp. Have a great weekend. Up next, an encore edition of APTN Investigates. Take care, everyone.